my name is Shreya Banu-Padhyay and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I kind of came to the Center for Law and Justice, like it was a weird path because I didn't really know that I wanted to do, or I was interested in law and like legal things. When I first came to college, I was much more like, I'm a poli-sci kid, like I like politics. So I just kind of did that. And then I discovered that Madison has the legal studies program because I think that's kind of like a rare oddity of Madison because I haven't really seen that many like law degree, like, you know, law degrees for undergraduates in other undergrad programs. So I got excited by that and I took a class with Ralph Grunwald, which I probably shouldn't call him Ralph because he loves being called Professor Grunwald. So him and his criminal justice class. And I was like, this is it. Like I was blown away. I just really enjoyed that class. I'm not as criminal justice oriented in my like regular life trajectory, but that class was a really nice introduction into legal studies. And then I just kind of kept on taking classes from there and I eventually declared. But yeah, and then in like other things that I do outside of school, I have done internships with the Capitol, and I kind of got to get the legal side of that through working with Senator Lena Taylor and working on bills and getting to like kind of learn about them on a firsthand basis, because I think, you know, it's kind of difficult to know what those really are when you're just a person, but getting to work on them is exciting. And then I've also done a lot of voting work, and I did not realize how much legalness went into voting. So it's fun to have to, it's not fun, but, you know, keeping up with the laws side of that. And then it's fun to like talk to people about voting and making sure they vote. So that's just a bit about me.
And very relevant. So yes. Matthew, tell us about you.
For sure. So my name's Matthew Armbruster, pronouns he, him, his. So I actually came into UW Madison as a bio pre-med major. That changed really fast when I started taking like chem and bio. Was not a huge fan. So like Shreya, I actually took Professor Grunwald's class. Loved it, kind of stuck with it. So my majors right now are legal studies and social welfare, which I recently added. And then I have a certificate in criminal justice. The social welfare was kind of out of the blue. I threw it in there just because I'm going into a criminal investigations career. And I think that allows me to learn about some of the populations I'll be working with on a bit of a different level. And it's already been pretty applicable in some of the work I've been doing. So actually, I'm finishing up my internship with the Division of Criminal Investigations right now. That's been super fun. I'm just grateful I even got to do it with COVID going on. I got assigned to a specific case, which is not normally how they do it, but we had to like limit the amount of people I guess I was in contact with. I can't say like exactly what I was doing, but I was able to like handle sensitive information. I got to go on some like search warrants and arrests. I got to see basically how like an investigation progresses from like start to finish. And all the like paperwork and stuff behind it. That's the not so fun part that you don't see in TV shows. But it was super exciting. I learned a lot. It kind of like reaffirmed that I wanted to stay in that career. But like where I am today, like I had no idea I would be here even like 2 years ago. So it's just interesting to see. But the program has been great. If I could say one thing, it's just like use your resources, like the professors and like SuccessWorks even, and the internship program itself. Been awesome. So
well, yeah, thank you. And
that's it for me.
I'm really glad that you have utilized resources too from legal studies, because I know it's leading you in future questions about careers that we'll get into. Michaela, you're next on my circle here. How are you? Tell us about you.
Yes, I'm good. So my name is Michaela Schrang. I am a senior this year. I'm majoring in psych and legal studies, and then criminal justice and gender women's studies certificates. When I first started here, I came in undecided. I didn't really know where I wanted to go. Like I knew psych was interesting to me, and like I knew legal studies and like a potential law future was interesting too. So I just like took some introductory courses, tried to figure that out. I also took Professor Grunwald's class, and that was like the it for me. Like I love this. Like this is so interesting. Like he did such a good job of just presenting like all the ideas. He was so fun, engaging, everything. And I was like, wow, like I want to continue with this program. So that's when I like started my criminal justice certificate and then legal studies. And just from there, like I've taken so many different like legal studies courses, some that like mix with gender women's studies too, which is like a big interest of mine. And I've really loved like all of the professors that I've worked with. Like I really like the criminal justice, like legal studies department in general. They really want you to succeed. Like they're always there for you. If you have questions, like they're there to answer them right away. Like honestly, it's just amazing. And then through the criminal justice program, I have an internship. I was emailed like an opportunity one time that they like send out through the criminal justice email. And it's with CUNA Mutual Group. It's an insurance company in Madison, and I'm in the special investigations unit. So I just get to like work with the investigators, like investigate insurance fraud, like do different sorts of things with that. So like I've been there for about 2 years now, and I really like it. And I got to like continue it on after the summer program. And yes, I just like recently got accepted to law school. So I'll be going there next year. So very exciting.
Really exciting. And I know, of course, you sort of found that out like the first week of school. I think the first day, well, certainly the first day of my class this semester. And again, we can't all take credit for the amazing things you all like turned out to do, but then we all get sort of like, oh, they go out and change the world just by being them. So Erin, you're like next in the circle, but Erin, you know, are, we wanted to talk to people, you know, somebody who is like, hey, you've been out there and like, not that college isn't the real world, but like you've moved a little bit past, you know, being a student at UW. So tell us about you.
Sure, and let me know if there anything wonky happens with the audio because this computer has a mind of its own. But yes, my name is Erin Perkins. I'm a graduate of UW Madison as of December 2008. I, like a couple of you, started off thinking I was going to do the pre-med thing, and I was doing all of the, you know, biology, chemistry courses and things. And when I did an internship at a local hospital, that was when I realized that medicine wasn't really what I wanted to do. It felt like there were just things that I couldn't fix, whereas the criminal justice system is a lot of policies, a lot of protocols, and those are things that I felt like were like more manageable, more fixable. And also because I watched a lot of court TV at the time. So I ended up switching over to criminal justice, or working on the criminal justice certificate. My majors were sociology and legal studies, and I kind of fell into sociology. There were just some classes that I took that were really interesting, and they all ended up being under the heading of sociology. And legal studies was tacked on there once I already had the certificate in criminal justice and the major in sociology, because it was just another couple extra classes. So I really did sort of piecemeal it together. So if you're feeling like I haven't figured it all out by junior year, it's not over for you. So I did my internship in the summer at the Dane County Public Defender's Office. I did learn that I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I did learn that I'd liked working in criminal justice. I just didn't know what that role was going to look like. So immediately after graduation, I worked for Porchlight at Night, which is a nonprofit in Madison that works with the population that has house or home housing instability. And then during the day, I was working at Attic Correctional Services at a community-based residential facility, working with 19 men who were living in the same facility who all had various substance use disorders. So during the day I was there, at night I was there, and somewhere in between I was volunteering with domestic violence victims. So I was meeting with them in different confidential locations around Madison and helping to connect them with services. So really just trying to get my feet wet and figuring out what direction I wanted to get into. After that, I came back to Milwaukee. I briefly worked at a nonprofit called Safe and Sound, which is a nonprofit that works on various quality of life issues. It works with residents and governmental organizations, criminal justice organizations to work on just anything that residents are concerned about. So I was stationed in a police district in Milwaukee, and I worked with prosecutors and community organizers, Department of Neighborhood Services, police officers, and worked with residents just to figure out what are the things that really matter to the residents in that neighborhood and how can we be helpful in addressing those issues. So I was there for maybe a year and a half before I went over to the city's health department. I was in the Office of Violence Prevention. So my job was to work on community education, legislation, and policy and protocol around domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse. So I was there for about 6 years until I went to where I am now, which is the Milwaukee Community Justice Council. So now I oversee a grant for Milwaukee County, which works on reducing unnecessary jail use in Milwaukee County and reducing racial and ethnic disparities in the criminal justice system. So I really hopped, skipped, and jumped my way around until I found something that worked for me. And it just ended up being this intersection of sort of public health and criminal justice and working on system reform with like different collaboratives of residents and system stakeholders.
So, I mean, you didn't completely leave behind medicine or the lawyer, like, you know, doctor or lawyer, you made your own versions of that in your life.
Yeah, I call myself a public health hipster. Like I was combining criminal justice and public health before everybody else was. So that's sort of the niche I've carved out for myself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so cool. Thank you so much for telling us. And then, okay, Jen, and again, Jen, thank you for joining us from, I wouldn't even say like halfway across the world, but yeah, tell us about you.
Okay, so hi, my name is Taeyang, but as Frankie is calling me, you can call me Jen. That's my English name that I'm using, and I'm a junior, but I only have one semester left, so it's kind of awkward to how to call myself. But I'm majoring in political science and legal studies, and I actually applied and declared as a political science major first, but I also took Professor Grunwald's class. The next semester, I declared as political science and got engaged into this legal studies area. So that's why I'm here as a legal studies major. And I didn't really have any internship experiences yet because last year I applied for them, for a few of them, but they got canceled because of the COVID-19 situation. So I'm still trying to have some more internship this summer, but I'm not sure what will happen. Yep. And I don't know. That's basically about it for myself.
But you have like interest, I mean, you certainly have interest areas or, I mean, I know from papers or projects that you've done in my classes, but you have interest in research areas or potential professional areas that you are considering, and what are some of those?
Potentially I'm considering to go to Korean law school because of the largest is the COVID, and also because of my family issues. I was hoping to go to US law school, but I changed my mind. So I'm applying for Korean law school next year. And specifically, I'm hoping to work with people who are in poverty situations that needs more policy focus, or women in the workplace, especially because not many of them are being protected in the society by law in Korea. So those are my research focus that I hope to get to learn more about and work in the future.
I mean, I'll admit, you've certainly taught me more about the Korean legal system than I knew. And I suppose for video's sake, I actually did not introduce myself. My name is Frankie, and I am a PhD candidate in sociology. Like Erin, I would say that I fell into sociology in an undergraduate way, but I am now a dissertator, but I lecture for the for sort of a legal studies, gender studies branch, but the Center for Law, Society, and Justice kind of has become my home. So everybody except for Erin. So Erin, I'm going to ask you first. Everybody has talked about Dr. Grunwald, Professor Grunwald's class, right? Which is now it is the introductory gateway that, Legal Studies 131, which is sort of the larger lecture class about sort of introduction to, the American criminal justice system. But Erin, 10 years ago, the whole class landscape could have been different. What were some of the courses you most remember or that you remember and that contributed to your career, or, favorites that you took here?
I would say, everybody loved Irene Catelli. She was an iconic UW Madison professor. And so she was I would say between her and Carolyn Lesh, who oversaw the criminal justice program, the two of them, when I was really struggling as a student at UW Madison, they were really key to making sure that I stayed engaged. And so I had classes with Professor Catelli, and I think she taught the introductory criminal justice class. And so I don't think, if I hadn't had that class, I don't think I would have completed that certificate. Another class that I always recommend to my students, because I work with the criminal justice students who have internships over the summer, is there's an interviewing class that I think was under the School of Social Work, maybe, or Human Development. But that was really critical, both in terms of how you talk to people when you're in a professional setting, especially when you're dealing with people who are really vulnerable and come from really difficult places. You need to be able to build rapport with them really quickly. And I think that class was really critical in helping me feel comfortable when I'm sort of thrown into a situation where I have to where I'm interacting with someone who's coming from a really difficult circumstance, and just need to be able to gather information from them and, build that kind of rapport that's necessary to do my job. And also just when you're going out and interviewing, it's helpful just to have the background and the mindset that's necessary to make it through job interviews and things. So just from a purely, just kind of just a practical standpoint, I think it makes sense to do that interviewing class. And then lastly, interestingly, and I never would have expected at the time that I took it, I think one of the most valuable classes that I took was sociology of gender. Not something that I would have expected to be as relevant, but especially when you're dealing with like gender-based violence, and being able to talk really inclusively about gender, and just the implications of gender in the criminal justice system. We tend to have very gendered facilities in the criminal justice system. We're dealing with gender-based violence in the criminal justice system, and now we're sort of trying to make the leap, or it really shouldn't be a leap, but trying to be more inclusive of like the trans population as well. So I think those are also just having that background and having that class, it's been helpful to think through the complexity of inclusion and making sure that everybody's included. And so that class has ended up being more useful than I ever would have expected.
Well, and this is a very interdisciplinary field, as all of you have pointed out, and it is professionally as well. And of course, I'm sitting here going, my undergraduate degree is not in legal studies. So like, how did I end up in the law? But it was through history actually that I ended up here. So, sometimes those interdisciplinary areas and also the skill sets, like you said, interviewing. And I think that would also be true for several of you. Matthew, talk to us about your class, favorite classes and or, professors or academic experiences that really have moved you in some way.
For sure. So class-wise, I was thinking about this the last couple of days. I've taken a lot of like legal studies, I guess, in criminal justice dominated coursework. I think a few that stood out to me, wrongful convictions was a great class. I don't know, it was just something I hadn't taken before, or like even like the material was so new to me. That's what I love most about my favorite classes, is the material is just something I've never been exposed to. We talked about sort of expired techniques still used in the criminal justice field. We discussed like the Reed technique for investigative procedures and interviewing. We discussed arson cases and some of the older like methods still used to determine whether or not like someone committed arson, stuff like that, and how these techniques are at flaw for putting people in prison that probably shouldn't be. And for me and it depends on like who you are and what you're going for, but for me that applied well to the career I'm going into with criminal investigations, because it's things I can consider before I actually like apply it to a case, and like how I'm interacting with people, what I'm assuming, what types of techniques I'm using. So that was great. And then I would say in terms of some of my other classes, crime, gender, and justice was great. Law and sexuality was great, which you teach, Frankie. That was a good class. Those materials, I think, really helped me just understand some of the populations I hadn't thought about who I'd be working with. And even like information you wouldn't think that'd be super useful, like I was able to apply that to my internship course. So I think combining your internship course, you're going to be required to take it if you do like legal studies or criminal justice, but it'll be the place and platform where you can like apply all of this information. And a lot of times we're just like so bogged down with like information, you're just trying to process it. And it was nice to have a place to actually like apply and use it. And I just think that helps it stick a little bit better in your head. So overall, like those were probably the application of the things I learned through some of those classes to my internship course was probably the best experiences I've gotten. So that's what I really enjoyed.
It's so good to like hear, that people take our courses and then go out into the world and use the knowledge. Not that there are majors that don't, but sometimes I imagine there's some majors that people sort of enjoy the courses, but then don't get to touch back to them on a daily or regular basis. So Shreya, talk to us about some of your favorite courses. You have so many interests. So tell us a bit about the courses that have contributed to your love for this department, our Center for Law, Society, and Justice.
Yeah, so my story is kind of similar to Matthew, honestly, where I took like some more introductory courses such as Professor Grunwald's what is that one called? It's legal or criminal justice 131.
Yeah.
Criminal justice in America or
America,
something like that. But yeah, there. So I took that class, and I think that was really helpful to kind of get an understanding of what the field I was working in was. And then kind of moving on from there, I took legal studies 444, which was professions in criminal or professions in law. And that was a really helpful course. I kind of thought it was going to be boring, honestly, but going into it, like I wasn't really sure what to expect, but getting to hear from a range of different legal individuals in the legal profession was so helpful because it gives you an idea of like what are the different jobs that are out there. Because I know there's like, you know, people always love to say like, oh, you don't even know what the jobs are out there. And I was like, that is true. I don't. So it was super helpful to kind of hear from all of these people from like professions and around the world and around the legal justice profession. I don't know why I keep on saying legal justice, legal studies profession. And we even got to hear from somebody from the UN, which was really cool. So yeah, that was a really interesting class just to like learn. And then in my last year and then last semester, I got to kind of take more classes that were more in what I was interested in. And I'm much more of a gender and women's studies girl. Like I'm doing poli-sci, gender and women's studies, and legal studies as my 3 different like study areas. And so I got to take Frankie's class, and I told her this. I was like, this is what I want to do. Like this is my niche. Like this is exactly the intersection of things that I'm interested in. So that kind of like kickstarted me to think more about the future and think more about like how do I kind of figure out how to link these two things that I'm interested in and, you know, find a profession in that. And it also kind of helped me realize that I am not as interested in law school as I thought I was, because I don't think that I want to practice law, kind of like Erin had mentioned. It just seems like something I would not be good at. I get flustered easily and I would cry if somebody yelled at me. So it would not be for me. So that kind of helped me figure out that. And same with crime, gender, and justice. That class also like kind of linked my interest in gender and women's studies and then legal studies and kind of figuring out the intersections between those. So now it's just the hard choice and path of figuring out what I want to do in the future, but this has helped.
Well, I'm so glad. I should that the legal professions, that was the law in action course, the 444 sort of. Okay. Jen, you just nodded. You also took that law in action class. Tell us about your favorite courses, and you took the 444.
Yeah, I also took 444. It was last spring, I believe, when I took it.
Okay.
It was actually called Law in Action, and at that time, it wasn't really about a lot of law professions, but it was about different areas of law that it covered. So we had different law school professors come in and then talk about like intro to contract drafting or like international law and human rights. So that was a course that will help me to develop or find out which areas of the law that I wanted to research and have a job. So that's also a course that I also should recommend to other people. And another course is Professor Light's criminology class. I think that's coded as 441.
Yeah.
Sociology 441. I'm not sure how that's coded in legal studies, but that's also a really interesting course because in addition to those Professor Grunwald's course and the 444 course, that really helped me to think that I should go to law school and start learning or preparing to practice law, because that, the criminology course was not really about the law, but it was really about the cases and those research papers that was done about I'm repeating myself. It was a course about how the law was actually practiced in criminology in relation to criminal justice. It was definitely focused more on US crime statistics, but those focus still motivate me to learn more about it. And actually Professor Light gives you a really detailed information about different aspects and different topics. So yeah, I think that's really good. Although it's a 400 numbered course, I think it's a really good introductory course for people who are specifically interested in legal studies and criminal justice.
Yeah, no, that was absolutely, and I think you this is a great transition to ask Michaela this question. But we you find these systems, and it does almost feel separate, right? Because it's sort of the law and then criminal justice, right? But in so many ways, of the five of us, the five of you sitting here talking, you're all going through some similar programs or similar classes, but doing such different things, or even, who knows where we'll end up. Aaron and I can talk in 15 years and be completely different places and be like, how did we get here? We were sociology majors once. But that law and criminal justice sometimes can seem so separate, but are so deeply intertwined. And so your education and your background makes you suitable for, makes you brilliant in these two areas that really influence each other, right? So Michaela, you're experiencing that because you're sort of on the brink of like going out there. So I know a few of your favorite classes just because I've sort of followed you through some of your career, but talk to us, tell folks, what got you to the place you are now.
Yeah, so I really liked almost all of the classes that everyone else touched on. Honestly, those were some of my favorite courses. I really liked 441 with Professor Light. It was just like a really good introductory course. Like Jen said, like it's a 400 level class, but I think it's a good intro to like criminal justice and just criminology in general. I also took the crime, gender, and justice one that I think Matthew mentioned. I took it with Murchison, and it was like one of my favorite courses ever. Like it was such a great intersection course. Like it brought together like the criminal justice system, like race, gender, so many different aspects that I'm like really interested in. Like I love just like learning about just like systems of oppression, just the ways that people are marginalized, especially within the criminal justice and legal systems. And like that's what I want to do like in my future. Like I want to work with people who are disadvantaged by like these systems, and like I want to be able to make some sort of a difference. But so yeah, and then like along with Shreya, I really like the gender, women's studies, criminal justice, legal studies like intersections. So the class that like you teach, Frankie, the law and sexuality class, like I really enjoyed that too. And then one of my other favorite ones was legal studies 409. It's human rights in law and society. So that was like a very cool class to take. Like we talked all about like the different UN conventions and like everything that like all of the intersections of like race, gender, sexuality, things like that. So I really enjoyed that one too.
And of course I know you're not quite done. You're in my class this semester. So, we'll all of that is yet to be seen, but, I mean, everybody has these, y'all have these very different things that you even got from the same classes. But it speaks so much to what we have as far as, diversity of what you can kind of major in within a major, like kind of the trace that like we have, the gender, there's certainly gender courses, there's race and ethnicity focused courses, and that's awesome. So I guess I want to focus in a little bit on areas in which you see yourself professionally, or the internships that you found yourself in, and how our department and our department in our community, and or perhaps the internship course directly sort of sent you on a path. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you took an internship and now that's your whole life. Aaron, particularly for you, it sounds like what this led to then sort of these lily pads you've sort of jumped to become where you are today. And so I guess, Aaron, let's start. I'll start with you. How did the legal studies internship, but also just professionalization of our center, contribute to your career?
I love seeing students do the internship, and I'm glad that the university has continued to make it a required component of the certificate, because it takes everything that you've learned in the classroom, where, the criminal justice system looks so neat and, well, neat-ish in your books. And it seems like it's a very sort of cut and dry kind of process. And then once you're in these internships and you're working with professionals and you're working with clients, it brings the material in your classes to life in a way that you just couldn't get when you're sitting in a classroom. I also think it just gives you a really important leg up in the job market too, when you graduate, to be able to say that you had an internship where you were working directly with clients, you were working side by side with criminal justice professionals. I just think it gives you a really important piece that you can put on a resume and show people that you can operate in a criminal justice environment. But also, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's really critical in helping students figure out if this is really what they want to do. before you commit to doing 3 years of law school, it helps to sit in a DA's office or a public defender's office or a private firm and figure out what it really looks like to be a lawyer day to day. And it's okay if you come out of your internship and feel like you don't want to be a lawyer. That's okay. It's great if you come out of it and it reaffirms that you want to be a lawyer, but I'd rather have you figure that out in your internship than go and take the LSAT and then end up realizing that you don't like it. So I just think it gives you a preview of what you're getting yourself into. It helps to kind of figure out what your pathway is. For me, I started thinking maybe I wanted to be more like a social worker after my internship at the public defender's office because I was working with client services. And then, once I figured out, or once I was offered a position in the health department, I didn't know anything about public health, but it looked like a job description that I could do. It was all stuff that I felt comfortable doing. And then because of that job, I ended up doing a master's program with the University of Minnesota for a master's in public health administration and policy. But you kind of get yourself into these positions and they introduce you to more and more things and you start to kind of figure out what your niche is. And your internship is kind of part of that process. It helps you kind of flesh out, I like doing this, but I don't like that, and figure out how to, work through your different talents and apply yourself in different ways and stretch yourself in different ways until you figure out what your fit is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michaela, you sort of did that in a track where you sort of are now at you did take the LSAT, you are heading off to law school. So tell us, and you've worked in private firms and also in public spaces. So tell us about your professionalization experiences and your internship and work experiences.
Yeah, so like I said, I got the internship that I have now with the Special Investigations Unit through the Criminal Justice Program. So I'm really grateful that the program exists and that they're so just helpful in getting you to where you want to be, in the internship sphere. And I haven't done a whole lot of practice with lawyers, public defenders offices, which is where I want to be in the future. But my mentor back home, I work with him quite a bit, and he has a law firm, just does general practice law. But it's just interesting to see what his day-to-day life is and how he goes about all of his cases and everything like that. So
yeah, and it sounds like the exposure to those people, like Erin said, is sort of helps you see yourself perhaps in those spaces or not, and which is great because then your coursework becomes this, oh, here's what real life, real life, right? Where it really manifests. And of course, the people you're working with, especially, at the firm, probably don't have the same background that you do, right?
Yeah, I think having a mentor definitely helps. It definitely helps, being able to say oh, this could be me in the future. I see myself doing this in the future. They're there for me. And I can do it, honestly.
Yeah, that mentorship piece is so key, especially, in I think today's world too, where the system, the different careers and systems, are changing a bit, from when they were developed hardcore in the 1970s and 80s, and we are the generation to change them. But so Shreya, I'm gonna hit you up. You're sort of in almost I don't want to say opposite way, but your experience, sort of like Erin said, you sort of, thought you think about what kinds of careers you want, and then you kind of figure out, I took the LSAT and decided this is not for me. So tell us, Shreya, about you.
Yeah, no, for sure. As Erin was talking, I was like, yes, because absolutely, I think kind of throughout, when I came into college, I'd never done an internship before. So my first internship was with Senator Lena Taylor at the Wisconsin State Capitol. And I enjoyed that internship. I really enjoyed the people there. But I was like, I just don't think office work is for me, because it was a lot of constituent work. And then, yes, I got to work on bills, as I talked about, which was my favorite part of the job. But I just couldn't see myself doing that for a long term. I was like, yeah, maybe this could be a fresh out of college job. That could be fun. But yeah, I just didn't see it as a long-term career path. So I kind of pivoted from there. I kept going with poli-sci, and I added on legal studies, and then I kept my gender and women's studies. And so I was like, okay, I need to be more focused about what I'm doing. I shouldn't just take the first thing that's open, which wasn't that, but in a way. So I joined the social justice hub at UW and I work there. And that was really fun because I got to explore things more on the student level on campus. And I had a lot more say in what I was doing, and I could, kind of pick the projects that I wanted to work on. So I did some stuff with them. And then I landed at Badgers Vote, or the Andrew Goodman Foundation, with the Mortgage Center. And getting to do voting work has been like just the absolutely most fulfilling thing that I've done in a really long time. Because you kind of get that legal side of it from, as I was talking about earlier, like keeping up with the voting laws and making sure that everybody's informed on what's happening, especially with the last election. So kind of staying up to date on everything was really helpful and kind of trained me in that field, as well as talking with people, because I'm sure all of our social skills have like deteriorated greatly. I feel like mine have, because I never know when to stop talking. Like I've learned or noticed that I'm like, I don't know how to end my sentences anymore. So getting to talk to people through that internship was so helpful, and it continues to be. I'm still doing it. So yeah, that. And then most recently I'm interning at Vital Voices through the Wisconsin and Washington program, which is poli-sci, but I recommend it still. And so I'm doing that right now, and I'm on the comm side of everything. And so, yeah, kind of like Erin had said, like, it's kind of just, I hate saying this because I hate being told this, but trusting the process of just like going with it and kind of hoping for the best. And yeah, my dad keeps on like being like, because I'm a junior now, and he's like, what do you want to do when you're done? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, stop asking me. I don't know. So yeah, it's just interesting. And I really enjoy that the Center for Law and Justice is so here for you. Like everybody has mentioned, like kind of going to advising always calms me, because I am a ball of nerves always. And so after going to advising, they're like, Shreya, it's okay. Like you're gonna be okay. And like getting the advice from them and talking more about the future and what I want to do is so helpful. And I think it's really a treasured resource that we have at UW that not all public schools do. I'm not sure that everybody can say that they have the advising programs that we have that are so built for students and made for students, and are really there to help you and figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I'm thinking, Matthew, I'm thinking of conversations that we've had too, but also, I mean, I know that you've also been experiencing a professional world at a time when the profession that you're seeking is changing and is going to change, and you will be part of that change, which I think might be kind of, scary when you think about, potentially going into things like policing or, FBI, any of that. So I guess, tell us a little bit about your journey and your mentality. And I know you've worked and are applying, and or I secretly know that, I don't know if you know that I know you've been offered at least a position, and sort of how that is, how you got to there and how that's sort of making you feel and what you're seeing and how that's connected to the Center for Law, Society, and Justice.
Yeah, so it's been a super interesting like last year, 2 years, choosing a career path, because I'm going into criminal investigations, but that means starting out at law enforcement level for me. And being in Madison, it's at like the center of like a lot of these like hot debates right now, with like just a lot of the things going on in the country. Like if you pay attention to the news at all, like you all know what I'm talking about. So, and just to go on that, like that was super overwhelming right away. So use your advisors. Like Shreya said, there's a lot of times I'd go in there just panicking, and like I'd always leave feeling really calmed down. So that was really nice to have, just a great resource there. But yeah, so I am going into law enforcement. It is kind of an odd time to be going in right now. There's a lot of people who don't want to be going into it. So it's interesting going through the hiring processes and seeing like lower levels of applicants, and just kind of like the mentality and the questions have changed too, I think, the type of stuff they're asking you. And I even got a bit ahead of the game when I got my social welfare major. Just with some of the stuff going on, I figured it would be super important to start learning more about the populations, and more focus on talking rather than action, in terms of conflict resolution. And I think that's been super helpful. And I'm able to speak on that a lot in some of my interviews. And yeah, I did get a few offers, Frankie, but I actually ended up turning them down because I'm still shooting for Madison, because I think they're up and coming, and I really like their they're really focused on community policing. And that's a lot of stuff I've picked up through just some of the coursework I'm doing. It's definitely a scary process, and even getting your internship too. So really use your mentors because they're going to get you there. They'll get you an internship. I know that was super daunting to me just because I had like no family or anybody in like the criminal justice field at all. So there was like no one I could go rely on for that, to ask questions, but like they'll be there for you. They're not scary people. They're all super nice, easy to reach out to. But my mentor personally is Josh Mayers. So he's been great in helping me get to where I need to be, but they're great people to bounce ideas off of. It's just, I mean, anybody going into the criminal justice field right now, I think we're in a time of like large reform, or a lot of reform will be coming. I mean, even outside of just law enforcement, there's a lot of like action going on. I think just the situation in our country right now, there's a lot of people pushing much needed agendas. And it's just something like I've learned I needed to be like more up to date on like watching the news, like being aware of like other groups. And coming from a small town, like joining this program was great because it like opened my eyes to like a lot of things I hadn't seen before. And I think overall, like this whole process is just like made me a more open-minded person, which I think has been really useful. So I guess I kind of went all over the place there, but I think I wrapped it up kind of. So
no, I think that's great. It's you know, the the legal systems, law enforcement has very much been under debate for, and like you said, for good reason, that we all know because we're part of this academic center, and you all have read it and seen it and experienced it in different ways. But yeah, it is, you know, and Matthew, I really appreciate, you know, you and I also, and you here, you know, being able to talk about that. And, you know, that is the kind of change, discussion, philosophy, you know, things that I think will make those changes, right? And so, you know, I love that you are so candid there. So Jen, you know, I know that you haven't had, you know, the internship program necessarily, but there are certainly, you know, elements of professionalization that you've either, you know, through the sort of law in action, but professors talking class, but also, you know, you talked about the journey you found, and also thinking about, you know, devoting yourself to the law and going to law school in Korea. Can you talk to us just a little bit about that and how you sort of landed there?
Oh, yeah. Like I didn't have any opportunity to go and visit the advisors about my internship program yet because it's definitely happening. Like I'm hoping to have internship in different country than US and outside of Wisconsin. So I know that it's really hard for them to find a internship in Korea for me, just for me. So but I had opportunity to talk to my mom's friends who is also a lawyer, but she's working in a big company, not a law firm. So she actually works for a company people, like company issues with other company. So that was my first, how to say, professionalization experience or anecdotes that I heard about as a lawyer. And that really that actually helped me to, how to say, dream about Korean law school because before then, I wasn't really sure if going to the law school was the right thing because it's definitely 3 more years of studying. And then I still need to go through that bar exam to become it. And then I was like, do I really like studying that much? And I want to study 3 more years. But actually, after talking to her, I was like, even though this may cost more time and money for myself and my family, I want to do it because having the lawyer's license or having that law experience definitely exposed myself to more opportunities with helping others, and especially those women who are still, how to say, in a disadvantaged position, I think, in Korea, and people who are in poverty who didn't really have enough voice to make enough policy changes. So that was my first, how to say, professionalization touch or feeling that I got that ended up me to dream about Korean law school. And I say, I'm hoping that I can go into it because it's getting really competitive in Korea. But I hope that going to law school opens me some opportunity to actually become a defense attorney or any other internship opportunities in the legal studies and criminal justice area. So yeah, I hope I also have enough time and experience as other four of you did and learn more of Allah. Yep.
I mean, all of you, and I'm going to include myself here, devoting a lot of time to school, and, Erin, you going back to school, and like, obviously I'm in the PhD world and I'm going to hang in here for as long as possible, but that, we're using these skills and talents or, the sort of gatekeeping in order to make change or work on behalf of so many different groups, which I think is also a testimony to the purpose of your degree too. So I suppose in our last couple of minutes, I would love to hear from each of you, just, so for Erin, sort of like you looking back, but for everyone else, thinking in, the next 5 to 10 years, what do you imagine or think that you'll remember most about your time either in legal studies or criminal justice with us, the community or the coursework and the professionalization all put together? What do you imagine taking away with you? And then Erin, I kind of want to talk to you last so that I can hear, what you did take away with you and the thing that most you brought with you. So let's, Michaela, let's start with you. What do you imagine that will be the thing that most you take most with you from us?
Yeah, I think overall from this experience, just like everything I learned, it's going to be very applicable in my future. So I'm just very excited to like work with those ideas, and then just like taking with like the support, like this program is so supportive, like whether it be the professors or like Martine working with us, like they're all supportive, like want you to succeed and do well. And like I know that I'm going to need to find that like in the future too, especially like in law school. I'm going to need like the mentors and the professors that I can look up to and just go to with help. So that was a great takeaway from this whole experience.
Yeah, if I don't hear from you in a year, I'll be trying to find you via email in some law school and be like, where's Michaela? Yeah, thank you for sharing. Matthew, how about you? What are you thinking about, that you'll take away from our community?
A lot, hopefully. I've learned a lot. I would say most of all, I think we come into college like sort of thinking like, oh, we need to obtain all this information, and then we get here and there's like so much. But what I'm finding most of all that I like have developed over the years is like a way of thinking that I definitely didn't have before. Sort of like a more analytical, speculative, just mindset, I guess. And the culture in this group through our program, it's just very like, I like the inclusiveness, but also like the open-mindedness at the same time. And I think that's something I'll take away. Just everybody's helping each other, even though like some people may have different career goals. I mean, all of us here seem to be going completely different directions, but yeah, we all are contributing to something and sort of like have some common ground, which is fun too. So overall, I'm going to keep a lot of the contacts I have because there's a lot of intelligent people in the program that I'd like to like bounce ideas off of, because I still have no idea what I'm going to be doing. So I guess just keeping the connections and networking I've created, as well as like sort of an open-minded way of thinking. And hopefully I can somehow stay involved in the program too. I'd love to keep helping out because it got me to a place I didn't expect to be at. So.
Well, again, you're someone who, if I don't sort of get hey, where did you, where are you? Are you nearby? Like if I, suddenly need to, report something, are you going to be on the phone? So we want to follow up too. Shreya, how about you? I know you're sort of, it's like looking into, you still have a year yet, but like, what do you think that you might take away in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I think kind of similar to what Matthew said, like I thought I would be an absolute expert in everything that I wanted to study by the end of college. And I think it's like, this sounds silly, but it's kind of the comfort with not knowing, like just being comfortable with understanding that you won't know everything. And as you grow, you're gonna learn more, but even at like, you just won't know everything that you want to know. And it's kind of keeping that like thirst for knowledge and just kind of always being willing to learn and grow. Has even for me been a really like has been a challenge, because I've always been somebody who's like, no, I want to be the only person who knows everything about this. Like, I want to be the expert in this. And it's always hard to admit that you're wrong. So kind of from this program and getting to do discussions with individuals in the program has been so helpful to just my own individual development and growth, and getting to learn from other people. And also not just in the, in the field of whatever class I was taking, but just like professional growth, and being like, okay, you're not always going to be right, and you have to understand that other people have viewpoints that are just as important as yours, and it's important to treat those with respect and kindness. And also naming harm but understanding the intention has been something that's been really important, because as a woman of color, there's often harm done, but you have to understand the intention and kind of figure out, what did they really mean by that, and how can I help them grow? And also understanding that it's not always my job to help other people grow. But yeah, kind of along with that, just a new way of thinking. And then also figuring out that I do need help, and it's okay to reach out to other people. I think both the advising systems here and professors like you, Frankie, like, you're not a professor, but instructor, has been so helpful, because it's always scary to reach out to adults, especially mentors, and kind of be like, I need help. And, even like LinkedIn connections and stuff, like that's always a bit scary, because I am not readily a person who wants to bother other people, I guess, is what I always think of it as. But it's so not that. It's people who are genuinely here for you and willing to help, that want to talk to you, and you just have to make the first step and reach out, because people don't know that you need help until you say it. So I think all of those things have been really helpful from this program, along with just my professional development goals, and kind of getting a better idea of what I want to do. Like I mentioned, like I'm no longer all that interested in law school. I'm keeping it open. I don't know. I have a year left. A lot could change. But yeah, just kind of figuring out that law isn't just the courtroom drama that you see in like NCIS. It's not in NCIS. I don't know why I said that. One of those shows, but it can be gender and sexuality and law and politics and things like that. It's a lot more than what I thought it was.
I think some of these mentality things we're mentioning are like, maybe we should put this to all of students, like everywhere. I know that there are specific things that certainly from our department, I think we do well, obviously, and y'all are so wonderful, but yeah, these, the mentality. And of course, we're gonna reach out to you as alums, as we are here with Aaron, but Jen, so tell us, what do you think that you'll be taking away from this community?
First, I think I'll try to take away many of my knowledge from the coursework that I took, like not just the courses that we mentioned, like Professor Grunwald's or Professor Lights or your classes, but also other classes like the Legal Studies 450. I think that's the course that's about like jurisprudence and human rights. Like there are different sessions to it, but those are the courses that will help me to have like legal knowledge. They're not about just US, but law in general. So I think that's the first thing that I will try to keep to myself and use it in my law school life if I get to go to it. And secondly, I think I'll try to keep myself with the idea of thinking, looking at the big picture, but also focusing on the every details. Like just for an example, like the abortion law that has been changed over the years, but just few words are the ones that made differences in between them, like the Roe v. Wade cases and the Planned Parenthood cases. Like those are the ones that made a lot of changes, but only changed in few words. So like focusing on those details is the one thing that I really learned that is important from these courses. So that's another thing that I'll try to have with myself. And lastly is the faculty or the professors that I had got to learn, including you, Frankie, and other instructors will help me to, shape my way of thinking. Because before then I was like, well, isn't law is easy because they're all codified and judges have to consider like what law they just broke and then give them the right punishment. But it was not this simple. That's what I learned. So I hope I could keep those, not just factual knowledges, but also the way of thinking with myself into my future career and internships. Yeah, I think they're the most important aspects that I learned from the school.
Yeah, well, of course, I hope all of these things for us, but we do have like, I mean, this is a sample of one, but Erin, you kind of have done this and, you know, taken away, and perhaps maybe in 10 years, you'll be in a different sort of takeaway, but, you know, looking back, were there things, you know, and you mentioned that you were inspired by some of, you know, the greats, you know, Irene Catelli and Carolyn Lesh, you know, who did build the foundations of this program. We have awards named after, you know, the Catelli Award, and we, of course, Carolyn is still very much part of our department, but, what are some of the things that are in either your daily life in your or in your mind and your heart still from our department?
Yeah, I think I've definitely continued to have a support system back at UW Madison. You know, Carolyn has continued to be a mentor to me. And now I have a whole host of colleagues that come from different criminal justice fields who are all also field instructors with me. So I still maintain a connection to the program. And it's great every summer just to come back and interact with the student interns, because just like they're learning in their internships, I'm learning from them. They're in all kinds of organizations all across the state and across the country. In some cases, I've had interns in Israel, like international students doing things. So I learned so much from the students every year just about how things are different in different places and how different organizations kind of fill in these gaps in the criminal justice system. So definitely I still have that connection and support back at UW Madison. Interview skills, like I mentioned, that is definitely one of the most critical things that I walked away with, even just when I've gone to job interviews, learning in that class that a job interview is just as much about you learning about an organization as it is about them learning about you. That takes that sort of adversarial edge off of job interviews and helps me feel a little bit more comfortable. So I still definitely use bits and pieces from that interview class. But I think lastly, the thing that I still use and I still refer back to are some of the experiences that I had as an intern that really helped to humanize the criminal justice system. You know, I think there's people get into this field for all kinds of reasons, and sometimes it's the sexy stuff that they see on TV. It's the it's the Law and Order SVU. It's all the sort of crime shows and stuff. And there's this there's good guys and bad guys, and we're trying to lock up the bad, and there's this mindset of it being something that it isn't. And really the people that work in the system and the people who come through the system, the victims that you're working with, the defendants that you see in court, the people that you see incarcerated, they're all there for different reasons, and they're all coming to it with their own histories and their own traumas, and they're all vulnerable in their own way. And I remember being a student intern and sitting across from a gentleman who was told that he had done something that had cost someone their life, and he himself had a really extensive history of trauma, and he was told that he was going to be in custody for 10 years. And the look on his face and the way that his body language changed, I mean, you hear us throw around 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and it all just kind of sounds the same until you're sitting across from a person who will be incarcerated and not leave a prison for 10 years. And once I heard his history, you just wonder how someone could have made it out of that situation in a stable kind of way. Like no matter what he did, he was going to have challenges because of it. And I also interviewed Judge Markson, who's now retired, when I was an intern, and he also just spoke to the complexity of the system and just the amount of emotion that's involved in it, and the number of people who come through the doors. And he had this woman who showed up in court for a homicide case. It was her son that had been killed, and she showed up and she wanted to have empathy and wanted to help the person who had harmed her son. And it just wasn't something that he ever expected. And it speaks to the kind of vulnerability and the complexity of the people that are coming through the system. And I think that's something that I reflect on regularly, is just that I can't make assumptions about the people that work in the system, and I can't make assumptions about the people who are coming through the system. And I just need to be sensitive to all those different things so that everybody comes out of it okay.
Well, Erin, I might just sort of sum up with your own words, it sounds like we all have a very humanizing experience through this department, through this program of what is seemingly our professions, but also our academics. And from the times we sort of learn about laws younger and then grow up to then be part of the legal system in some way, which of course for all of us is different, but very much humanizing. And I really appreciate that. And again, I'm very grateful. And I think that you know, on behalf of the department, we are very grateful that all of you were willing to come today and speak and, you know, talk about your experiences, be vulnerable with me and with us, and share with other students, prospective students and otherwise, you know, about the world that you've been living in, and the you know, and it's also an interesting time to be living in and doing these kinds of things. But yeah, I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to each of you for sharing with us.